chapter 22, which is on page 467. We've been talking about special relationships and holy relationships. And before we get into towards the end of this section here, this has a very nice summary. It's chapter 22, Salvation and the Holy Relationship, and it's just the introduction part. And I've just grabbed a few paragraphs out of here. Actually, look at the second paragraph. Go into the, gosh, I'm not sure what line it is. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about the sixth line there. It says, for an unholy relationship is based on differences, where each one thinks the other has what he has not. They come together, each to complete himself and rob the other. They stay until they think that there is nothing left to steal and then move on. And so they wander through a world of strangers unlike themselves, living with their bodies, perhaps under a common roof that shelters neither, in the same room, and yet a world apart. So we started talking about this tonight, that holy relationships and special relationships, and this is talking about unholy relationships, same concept, special relationships, unholy relationship. They're all based on difference. And what this section that we were talking about in chapter 16, the section entitled The Choice for Completion, which emphasizes special relationships, it basically says is that we're always looking to complete ourselves. Something's missing, right? That's what the Course always says. We think something's missing. From the very basis of the Course's thought system, we think we've done something to separate ourselves from God, from love, from truth in some way. We've forgotten our essence. We think we're the clown costume. We think we're the scary clown costume. We think we've separated ourselves from God, that because we did something to God, that we have to run it. We ate the apple and we got kicked out of Eden, and that he's after us to punish us for something that we've done. There's no punishment. We're healed, I would say, or we're saved under the New Testament, if you will, when we are the prodigal sons who have wandered away simply from our Father's home, and that he's waiting for us to come home. There's no punishment, there's no judgment, there's no hate, there's no anger, there's no retribution. And when we finally come home, our Father loves us and embraces us. Now, that is the truth about us. But as long as we believe we've done something wrong, we feel alienated from our Father, we run into these relationships that prove to us our unworthiness. That's the essence of special relationships. The essence of holy relationships, as we're going to see in just a moment, prove to us our unity, prove to us our worth. So in a special relationship or an unholy relationship, it's going to be based on differences. Why? Because it's going to reflect what we feel about God. We feel separate from him. We feel we did something to separate ourselves from the truth. So every relationship that's based on separation is really reflecting, again, as the Course constantly tells us, it reflects again our thought of separation with God. There's only one problem, as the Course says, the thought that we could be separate from God. It's just replayed over and 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 over again in all of our relationships that are based on differences and separation. A body doesn't function. It's different. It's separate. I don't like what you did. We're different. We're separate. We have different political views. We have different skin color. We have different religious views. Look at all the things that are going on in different parts of the country based on differences. It was interesting. We were watching, this is Veterans Day, as a matter of fact. We all know that probably. It's Veterans Day. It's why we have days off. But we were watching a documentary last night on PBS about Iwo Jima. And the attack on Iwo Jima, and the Allied forces, or the American troops and the Japanese troops, actually have come together. The people who fought on Iwo Jima have finally come back together after many years. They've been doing this for, I think, the past 20 years or so. There's this great desire for them to join together. The two that fought each other, they lost 36,000 men on Iwo Jima. The Americans wanted that piece of land to be able to land their planes on that and be able to then hop over to Japan and bomb it. That's why they wanted that piece of land. The Japanese knew they could not hold that property. They knew it was pointless. They knew that the Americans would take it, which they did. but they still fought anyway. There was, great loss of life, great loss of life. And the Allies or the Americans that were talking about it say, when I think of Iwo Jima, I think of all the people that were lost. And the Japanese who talked, it was very interesting. They said the same thing. They never wanted to kill, but they had to. They were forced to do this. So there was this wonderful, these powerful stories still of these Americans that are alive today talking about this. This one man said, I hated the Japanese. When I came back, he says, his wife was sitting there with him, and he says, I was a mess. We didn't know what PTSD was. We didn't know post-traumatic stress, and we had no idea what any of this stuff was. I came back miserable. And she said, yes, he was. Yeah, he was miserable. And he's had 3 kids. And he said, I just hated the Japanese. He said, then irony of all irony, who does his son marry? A Japanese woman. And her father had fought in the war. They had 3 grandchildren. And they showed a picture of him on the ground with his 3 grandchildren all over him. And they cut back to him and he said, I just can't hate him. He said, they're the same as me. We are the same. We're all the same. There is no difference. And you can see this powerful transformation. I mean, the guy's crying. And the powerful transformation that took place in these people who came together, who had been enemies, now shaking each other's hands. And to some of these, the Japanese are saying, thank you for rescuing us, because in the Japanese mind, you can never be taken prisoner. They gave every Japanese man who fought in the military, the Japanese, a grenade so that they could pull the pin and blow themselves up as opposed to being taken captive. But this one guy was taken captive by the Americans, and he was grateful because he lived and he had a family and he had kids, and he was so grateful to them for their compassion to him. So we look at the differences and we hate the differences, and yet we are all the same. We are the same. There is no differences. And so special relationships, everything in this world, it says, starts out as a special relationships. We're seeing differences in us. That's just natural. And in the Course, it says that this always isn't so apparent, to us. We fall in love with somebody because we like their strength or we like their compassion. And so there's something about that person we like. And from the Course's perspective, it says, if it's a special relationship, we want to become more like them. We want to grab that thing inside of them and make it us. And in some ways, though, we're kind of stealing from that person. But if that other person says, hey, I'm really ready to get rid of this part of me, I'll just give it to you, then we have a marriage made in heaven. It's like, I'm going to the garage sale and I'm going to buy your crap because you don't want it anymore anyway. So I'm going to take it and I'm going to give you my crap. And if you like my crap and I like your crap, we've got a marriage made in heaven because we both like each other's crap. And so that's what it says. We think we're taking something of value, but we're really taking nothing. But there's a part of us that says, how can I take something of value from you and leave you with so little bit of nothing? That's what it says. They come together to complete each other, himself, and rob the other of what they really like. And so they stay there and they think that until they think that they've got everything, and then they move on. Because what usually happens is the thing that we like best about somebody ends up being the thing we don't like about them. You ever notice that? Like somebody's strong personality, we can go, that's just too strong when you get to know them. Or somebody's fun-loving personality, well, they're not serious enough. All of these things can turn into that if we come from a place of differences. And that's where we come most of the time in our relationships. Now, let's go on to the third paragraph. It says, but if special relationship starts with differences, a holy relationship starts from a different premise. Each one has looked within and seen no lack. So what that means is, let's say that's why a lot of times people who wait to get married, wait a little bit later in life, have a better success rate. Because they've kind of looked at themselves. They've done some introspection. They've become comfortable with themselves. They're not looking outside for somebody else to meet their needs. They recognize who they are and what that other person is. And we go into a relationship with our eyes wide open. Sometimes when we're younger, we're thinking I can rescue that person, I can change that person, and we come into it seeing differences, a need to change, a need to rescue in some way. This says we come into it, we have looked inside, we have seen no lack. Accepting his completion, then he would extend it by joining with another, whole as himself, recognizing that they are complete. He sees no differences between these selves, for differences are only of the body. Now we're looking a little bit deeper than just the surface. Therefore, he looks on nothing he would take. He denies not his own reality, because it is the truth. Just under heaven does he stand, but close enough to return to earth, for this relationship has heaven's holiness. How far from home can a relationship so like to heaven be? Meaning that when we feel a sense of completion within ourselves and look to that other person to enjoy their company, not to make them be like us or find something in them that we don't have within ourselves, we feel a sense of completion. And that reflects what the Course is constantly asking us to do, which is to heal this thought of separation. There are no differences. We see this unity, this completion. Now, look at that fourth line where it says, think what a holy relationship can teach. Here is beliefs and differences undone. Here is faith in differences shifted to sameness. And that reminds me so much, or reminds me of that story I saw last night about the Japanese and the ally or the American fighter who all he could see was hate and differences until those that he hated became his family. And then all he could see is that we were the same. So a faith in differences shifted to sameness. And here is sight of differences transformed to vision. Reason now can lead you and your brother to the logical conclusion of your union. It must extend, as you extended when you and he joined. Now listen to that. See, to me, in that moment when when this man who had hated the Japanese healed his thought about that culture and could see that we were all the same, that thought did not just heal within him, but reached out even farther. I know it made an incredible difference to me in that awareness. It must extend as you extended when you and he joined. It must reach beyond itself as you reached out beyond the body to let you and your brother be joined. And now the sameness that you saw extends and finally removes all sense of differences, so that the sameness that lies beneath them all becomes apparent. Here is the golden circle where you recognize the Son of God. For what is born into a holy relationship can never end. I just love that. In these shifts in perception, where we see our sameness, it says it goes just beyond the two. It moves farther into this golden circle where we recognize the Son of God within everyone and everything. Now, we may not always meet every person to heal every thought, but if we can hold on to that truth, that there are no differences, that we all share this oneness. And if somebody can do it, who has done that with a hateful enemy, who has killed so many of his best friends, but he can still see the sameness, we're all the same, then we can do it. We can do it wherever we may be.